So season 1 of Star Trek Picard finally staggered over the finishing line the other night after 10 painful episodes that ranged from mediocre to confusing to downright insulting. And I was there with my pint of rum, ready to point and laugh as I watched this train wreck unfold. I think it's fair to say that Patrick Stewart's long-awaited return to his most iconic role wasn't exactly the roaring success that CBS and Alex Kurtzman were hoping for. In fact, if Beyond and Discovery killed this franchise, then Picard resurrected its decaying corpse, bent it over a table, and had its way with it, using the teddy bear from my Doctor Who analogy. For me, it pretty much proves that Star Trek as a brand has basically exhausted its supply of everything a show needs to be successful. It's out of good ideas, out of creative energy, out of money, and well and truly out of fan goodwill. And it's a real shame, because for a while, Picard was touted as the show that was going to save Star Trek after the increasingly disastrous movies and the expensive waste of time that was Star Trek Discovery. So what the hell happened? Well, now that I've had a chance to see everything Picard has to offer, I've been able to ponder where and how it went so badly wrong, just as I do with my own life. So with that in mind, I've put together my top 5 reasons why this show failed to connect with audiences. Ready? Nah, me neither, but fuck it, let's do this. Number 1, the story. The Star Trek of the past never really got bogged down in continuous, season-long storylines, and for good reason. It's fucking boring. Yeah, there would sometimes be overarching threads that would crop up from time to time when the writers wanted to move the universe along, but at heart, Star Trek was always an episodic kind of show. Each week was a chance to start a different adventure, putting the characters in a new and unique situation so that it never got stale and dull. Yeah, some episodes were more successful than others, but even if you had a shitty one, you knew you could put it behind you and move on to something better next time. Now, we're stuck with the same basic fucking story episode after episode, and if you're gonna have your show focused on one central story arc, you need to make sure it's a damn good one. Unfortunately, well, this isn't. The premise of this show centers on the conflict between organic and synthetic life forms, and the fear that the artificial beings we create might eventually surpass us, either enslaving or wiping out their creators. It calls into question what sacrifices might be justified to prevent such a conflict, whether organic and synthetic life forms can find a way to peacefully coexist, and even the nature of what constitutes sentient life. Wow, can't think of any movies or TV shows that have tackled this kind of subject matter before. The problem is, not only has this exact same shit been tackled far more competently and intelligently in previous versions of Star Trek.
Are you prepared to condemn him and all who come after him to servitude and slavery? Your Honor, Starfleet was founded to seek out new life. Well, there it sits.
But this show tries to lump these high-flying philosophical questions in with a bunch of other random crap that they think will generate interest, such as government conspiracies, mysterious disasters and secret organizations, mindless action scenes, the Borg, brushes with the criminal underworld, a roguish Han Solo character, an epic race against time across the galaxy. It's all been done before, and done better. More important, it's been done far more concisely. This show takes the basic premise and ideas of a single TNG episode and stretches it into an entire 10-episode season by padding it out with a bunch of generic stuff that we don't particularly need or want. The end result is something that feels slow, plodding, convoluted and self-indulgent. Something that's all superficial style and no substance, which is the polar opposite of everything Star Trek was supposed to be. Number 2, the characters. There are like a dozen major characters in this show, most of whom have one significant thing to do and then go into a holding pattern for the rest of the season. There's Raffi, who basically serves no purpose except to facilitate a meeting between Picard and Rios. The rest of the time she alternates between a comically drunken, drug-smoking junkie and a wannabe wise mother hen character, depending on what the script needs her to do. Agnes, who's so pathetically whiny, useless and irritating that I have to grit my teeth every time her disproportionate face appears on screen. And for some reason, the script keeps making the actress throw up, like that's something we really need to see. But fuck it, it makes for a banging techno remix. And El Elnor, who can't decide if he's a badass ninja assassin or a sheltered, goofy, naive teenager who doesn't understand anything going on around him. It's a truly awful piece of characterization, and it's made all the worse because 95% of the time he has absolutely nothing to do. See, having a big ensemble cast is fine in an episodic TV show like, oh, I don't know, The Next Generation, because each week you might be facing a different challenge or situation, and it makes sense to have a large and diverse pool of characters to draw on. But as we've seen, Picard is all about telling one central story across multiple episodes, and the result is that most of the time there just isn't enough stuff going on to keep everyone involved. I'd like to bring you back to the golden rule of screenwriting. If you have to start looking for things for your characters to do, you should probably start killing them off, or just not have them in the show to begin with. Number 3, Picard himself. Picard feels like a bit player in his own story, consistently pushed into the background and forced to take a back seat to the subplots of the other, younger characters around him. In fact, this show feels like it really should have been built around Soji rather than Picard, and if I had to take a guess, I'd say she was actually the main protagonist in the early drafts of the story. She's the central plot thread that ties everything together, and she's the one who undergoes the biggest and most significant character arc. So you're probably wondering, why even call the show Star Trek Picard if it's not really about him? Well, Star Trek Discovery proved that the fanbase isn't all that interested in original characters at this point. Nobody gives a shit about Michael Burnham, despite the writer's increasingly desperate attempts to tie her into basically everything and everyone of note in the Star Trek universe. So what do you do when you've been told to make a new Star Trek TV show, but you're also a useless, talentless twat that doesn't understand how to come up with compelling, interesting and sympathetic original characters? Just like with Star Wars, you bring in a bunch of old characters that still have a bit of name recognition and fan goodwill, and use them as bait to draw people into your crappy, bland, generic show. Like, remember when Riker and Troy showed up for one episode that felt totally disconnected from everything else, and Jonathan Frakes basically admitted that the whole thing was done as a reshoot just so he could have a reunion with Patrick Stewart? That's exactly what I'm talking about here. In fact, I like to think the creative process went something like this.
Alex, we love your pitch, but we're slightly concerned that no one's gonna care about this show.
Nah, it'll be fine. All we need is a hook. Let's just throw in some classic Star Trek characters.
You mean like Captain Kirk and the original crew?
Nah, we've done that already. Plus, the original actors are too old, and the new movie ones are too expensive. I know, what about the Next Generation? None of them are doing much these days.
That's not bad. People love TNG, right?
Exactly. We'll use them in little cameos so we can dupe people into thinking this is a TNG reunion, but we'll keep their involvement in actual events to a minimum so we don't have to restructure the story too much, because that would require hard work and creativity.
I love it. But we need Patrick Stewart. He's the one people really care about, and he already said he doesn't want to do Trek anymore.
Nah, it'll be fine. We'll just throw a shit ton of money at him and pitch it like he's going to be the centerpiece of the entire show. We'll even call it Star Trek Picard, and we'll give him some bullshit creative control in his contract. I mean, that worked great for Nemesis, right? Remember the Dune buggy chase?
Yeah, we sure do. Great work as always, Alex. Keep up the good work.
The point is, all of these legacy characters feel like they've been included simply because they have name recognition and the actors were available. It's the same story with Seven of Nine, who's gone from being a cool, logical, reserved character to a hard-drinking, sarcastic, cynical mercenary because it fits the needs of the script. Oh, and she's gay now for some reason, because I guess her relationship with Chakotay in Voyager was just an act or something. We've got to have that representation, even if it means totally altering characters we've known for decades. But the undisputed king of Bullshit Mountain in this case is Picard himself. This guy doesn't act, talk, or think anything like the Picard we used to know. He gets disrespected, belittled, and chastised everywhere he goes.
Shut the fuck up.
I did everything I could.
And then you gave up.
You out of your goddamn mind?
Sheer fucking hubris.
And he accepts it like an absolute pussy. He never asserts his authority or takes command of a situation. He never stands up for himself or bites back at people when they get out of line. He never makes use of his decades of command, tactical and diplomatic experience. He just shambles around from place to place, apologising to everyone, taking a back seat in every situation. He's clueless and out of his depth and totally unprepared for the situation he finds himself in. He's easily frightened and shocked by things he's experienced countless times before. In short, this version of Picard is a fucking dumb, cowardly, submissive, irrelevant old wimp. There's nothing here to suggest this man could have commanded a starship, never mind saved the entire galaxy, and it's just kinda sad to see a once great man reduced to this.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Number 4. This isn't Star Trek. There's no easy way to say this. Star Trek Picard doesn't feel like Star Trek anymore. Yeah, a few familiar characters and actors have come back. There are some references to well-known ships and locations and species, but that's where the similarities end. It's like the makers of this show watched a few episodes of TNG with the volume muted and just kind of formed their own opinions of what the show was supposed to be about. The world they've created as a result feels like an entirely different universe with a Star Trek veneer awkwardly slapped on top. Characters talk and act like people from the present day, dropping F-bombs, calling each other dude, watching TV, drinking and taking drugs, playing on their fucking smartphones. Honestly, I'm surprised they don't show people getting into pointless arguments on social media and using dating apps to set up awkward sexual encounters. When did Star Trek become so fucking mundane and petty? The whole point of this show was to present a more evolved, enlightened version of humanity that had moved beyond the stupid shit we obsess over today and turned its eyes towards the stars. It appealed to our aspirations to be more than we are, to reach for higher and more noble goals, to explore the boundless potential that exists within us.
It is the struggle itself that is most important. We must strive to be more than we are, Law. It does not matter that we will never reach our ultimate goal. The effort yields its own rewards.
It wasn't a perfect world, and things like jealousy, personal ambition, and moral flexibility could still cause problems and conflict, but Jesus, it was better than this. The world of Star Trek Picard is basically our present day culture, with all its angst and hang-ups and fears, only with better technology, and that's just fucking depressing. Number 5.
Sheer fucking hubris.
Just like Star Trek Discovery that tried to awkwardly insert its vapid, preachy, soulless and unlikable characters into the backstory of classic Trek legends, thus retroactively taking credit for everything that happened afterwards, Star Trek Picard sees fit to alter the fundamental nature of the Federation, Starfleet, and basically everything else in this world. It's turned Starfleet itself into a diversity hire paradise where every single senior officer is female. It takes established and beloved characters that we grew to know over years or even decades and deconstructs them into obscene parodies of themselves. It undermines the basic message of hope and optimism that inspired the best aspects of human nature, presenting instead a bleak, hostile, greedy, dystopian version of the Star Trek universe. It plays on small-minded human fears of advancing technology instead of embracing and championing it as a means to improve our lives. It revels in gore, torture, violence and destruction in a show that was once about taking a higher path, using rationality, understanding and diplomacy to solve problems. It does all of this, and for what? To tell a story that nobody wanted in the first place? To explore ideas that have already been handled by other, better writers? To shamelessly force in the creator's political views that none of us asked for or care about? Or just to squeeze the last remnants of fan enthusiasm from a franchise that pretty much has been run into the ground by people who don't know what the fuck they're doing? I don't know, and nor do I particularly care. Star Trek Picard is just another sad example of what happens when arrogant, talentless, shameless hacks try to elevate their own mediocre work by standing on the shoulders of giants. And in the end, all it means is an even longer drop when they inevitably overreach themselves and fall to their doom. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.